All right. I think we are live. I
No, you're
believe
good.
so. Yeah, there might be a little bit of a lag with YouTube, but I think we're good to go now.
All good.
Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. I really wanted to start with that. Good day, everybody. Uh, thank you so much for joining another Miva Masterclass. My name is Anyekeme Omo. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Miva Open University, Nigeria's first private online or open distance university with 25,000 students enrolled in under 3 years. So hello to all of our students in all 36 states of Nigeria and in over 70 countries around the world.
Wow.
Um, so everyone knows the topic that we're here to discuss. Before we get into it, just in the chat, if you won't mind letting us know how many people, I know that this is a moot question, but let's just go with it. How many people right now use OpenAI's ChatGPT? Drop a comment, leave an emoji. Let's know.
I
Let's know.
hope all
I
of
know
you.
you're laughing. Who here uses ChatGPT? I know
And you
I'm
can,
there.
do you use ChatGPT yourself?
100%. I'm on a paid plan and everything.
Wow.
I use it like every
Wow.
day. um, if you are a student, I'm seeing in the chat. I do. Hands up. Nice. Thank you. If you're a student, I hope you're using it responsibly and in line with our policies for schoolwork. If you're doing that. Um, so today we're going to be discussing AI policy and innovation, building Africa's next chapter. And I have with me the person to have this conversation, the Africa lead at OpenAI, Emmanuel Lubanzadio.
Wow. Very nice to meet you all. And you said my name so correctly. People usually get it wrong the first time, but I'm glad
All right.
you immediately got it right. So it's supposed to be it will be a good conversation. I can just tell.
So thank you, thank you. So you and I actually met last year in New York while we were both speaking at Columbia
Yeah.
Business Schools Africa conference. That was great. So
Yeah.
it's really good to see you again,
Yeah. Likewise.
virtually this time.
Mhm.
All
Likewise.
right. So for the people who are meeting you for the first time,
Mhm.
allow me the honor of introducing Emmanuel. Emmanuel is the Africa lead at OpenAI,
Mhm.
where he leads strategic engagement across the continent in the intersection of policy, partnerships, and ecosystem development. Prior to joining OpenAI, Emmanuel built a global career spanning Africa, Europe, and the United States. Working at the nexus of technology, public policy, and government relations, his experience includes senior leadership and advisory roles, such as the head of government affairs for Africa at Twitter, policy advisor to UNICEF E2 Giga Initiative, and consultant to Block. These are the owners of Square, Cash App, Tidal, and Afterpay. I mean, we're talking to a tech heavyweight here.
No.
Earlier in his career, Emmanuel also held roles at the German Agency for International Cooperation and the Fresenius Group and the Center for International Private Enterprise, as well as the US Congress.
Yeah.
Fluent in English, French, German, and Lingala, Emmanuel has been recognized as an Atlantic Dialogue's emerging leader, an Atlantic Brook Young Leader, and a Congressional Black Caucus emerging leader, as well as a Schmitz Fellows or Schmitz Futures International Strategy Forum Fellow.
Like yourself.
This is something, yeah. Um, well, yeah, so drawing on your experience across the global technology ecosystem, we know that you're committed to empowering people and institutions to harness technology as a catalyst for inclusive growth
Mhm.
and societal transformation. So we are so honored to have you here today, Emmanuel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, everybody. And you came in very, very nice to be with you. And yeah, looking forward to an insightful conversation, hopefully.
All right, let's get into it. Time is money.
Let's do
So
it.
okay, so let's go back to 2008. You're
Mhm.
in the States, you had moved to the US
Mhm.
for a basketball scholarship.
Correct.
And while you were playing, that was around the time of Barack Obama's campaign, and they used Twitter and YouTube to essentially change politics forever.
Yeah.
And you're recorded saying that was when you first discovered tech policy. So can you take us back to that moment? What clicked in your head that made you think, okay, this is what I want to do next? And what was it about tech policy that like really drew you in?
Yeah, I would say no, Anika, I think this is a great question, which I always love discussing because it also takes me back how I got started literally almost, wow, is it 15 years ago? Yeah, time passes.
Wow.
For me, Anika, it was not so much that I knew what tech policy was during that time, right? It was just curiosity. So being in the US during a critical time between 2007, 2008, Obama was just running for president, first black president. He was super charismatic. And I think unlike his other candidates who also ran during that race, he actually used modern technology. And again, I was a college student during the time, and all of us on campus were just new to Facebook. I think Twitter wasn't even
Right.
out there, it was quite recent. But the whole social media was kind of new. And I was just super curious about, wow, this guy who's super charismatic, young, he speaks like a person who just plays basketball as well. He's out there and getting his message across the world. So yeah, that kind of sparked my curiosity, but I think understanding what tech policy was actually started a few years later when I worked in U.S. Congress after I graduated. But my interest actually just started seeing Obama run, being super charismatic, getting his message across, and kind of bypassing traditional media and even reaching young people by utilizing social media. I think that kind of sparked interest in general. And as I was studying politics, international relations, it kind of stuck with me as well. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So you're talking about Obama using the rising technology of the
Yeah.
time, right? And now we're in an era where that technology, we know what it is now.
Yeah.
It's AI. Um, since we're talking about Africa, right? I'd be remiss to not even begin by asking about the way that you've worked to get AI be more accessible to some of the countries on the continent. I
Yeah.
know that OpenAI recently launched ChatGPT Go. That's priced super accessibly in Nigeria. It's about 7,000
Yeah.
naira a month for that.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk us through how that cost reduction conversation like came about and how easy it was for the OpenAI leadership to be kind of convinced about the need for different pricing for the continent?
Yeah, I would say, and you came in with a very good question. Look, OpenAI's mission is that AI benefits all of humanity, right? And I think in order for it to benefit all of humanity, it needs to be not only accessible, but also needs to be affordable, right? Because look, if somebody lives in the US or Europe and he pays 20 something euros for a subscription, it's also kind of based upon the money that you actually make within that respective continent or country. So I think the conversation on ChatGPT Go started not, it was a global conversation, and then it kind of landed in India as well, and also Brazil, and then it came to Africa. It's just really part of our mission to ensure that AI benefits all of humanity. And again, as I've mentioned, if we are true to our mission, it needs to be affordable as well. So that's kind of running up how the ChatGPT Go conversation has been happening globally. And yeah, it's accessible globally as well. But I think affordability is just a very important aspect to consider when seeking to make AI beneficial for all of humanity.
Yeah. I really resonate with OpenAI's mission. I'm
Mm,
wanting this important new technology to benefit all of humanity
yeah,
and actually doing something about it. And it's interesting because you said that it, I think this was in an interview with Tech Build Africa, where you talked about how Africans should be not just consumers but also creators.
yeah,
Um, and so it's not just even only providing access and affordability, it's also that capacity building
yeah,
part of it. So for our students and anybody that's online, I think it would be really interesting to hear how a Nigerian student, a Nigerian current consumer of ChatGPT is able to move from consumer to AI creator. I don't know if you have a concrete example or use case that
yeah,
you can share that can help,
yeah.
give us an image of what that could look like.
Yeah, and again, the beautiful thing about AI is the fact that AI is so cross-sectoral, right? What I mean by that is whether you are in finance, whether you are a lawyer, whether you are artist, everybody can use it to their respective industry, to their respective operational interests, to each their own kind of, right? Also, for instance, OpenAI has over 1 million business customers, and these business customers range from the pharmaceutical sector to entertainment, etc., right? The reason why I'm saying this, and you came in, is because everybody looks for use cases, but everybody uses it to their own respective interests. I can give you an example.
Right.
When I was in Lagos at Unilag, one of the drivers who was supporting with my logistics in Lagos, he showed me how he's using Sora. He's using Sora to narrate Christian videos, and in all
Wow.
honesty, he showed me use cases that I didn't even know of, right? And what I mean by
Mm,
that, and why this example is so I think relatable, is you see this technology which is accessible, but at the same time, are you using it beyond just writing an email? So and it came, while I don't have like this perfect example, I think a good way to kind of say is you have to try what works for you, and whether you're an artist, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a researcher, try it to the respective operational interest, and then see what
right.
happens and what works. And I think this is a message of empowerment that I always love to stress. And it came in because I think whenever I travel, and not only on the continent, everybody asks me, okay, how can we become not users, but creators as opposed to only consumers? One thing I always say, use it. Start using it, right? Because I
Right.
think oftentimes the conversation around AI seems to be, or among a lot of people, this mystique thing, right? Nobody really knows, understands it, but how can you understand and figure this out if you don't actually utilize it? So my advice is really, it's accessible to you. As long as you have internet, use it. Try to research, try to become better writer, try it as a second opinion. Use it for a screenplay. I don't know, right? I'm a policy person, so
Right.
I will not even know. And I think, haven't even spoke to the fintech sector. I was just recently in South Africa, and many fintechs have actually told me how they're using it. Obviously, it's confidential, but they're
Yeah.
using it for customer related things, but also using for threat detection, etc. Right? So I think while there's no single perfect answer, I think everybody has kind of the ownership to kind of figure this out, how they can use it to the best of their ability. Like the person who I
Right.
told you about who's using Sora for the Christian videos, and he's making money of it. I
Yeah.
think he has like some of his videos have like 60,000 views on TikTok. And he told me he
Wow.
just discovered a side business, and he's selling these videos to clients in the US and Europe, and he was supporting with logistics, right? So to kind of tell you how it can empower people, but it's just about people using it. He was playing around with it. So
Yeah.
that's how he kind of got started. Yeah.
Wow, wait, that's amazing. I really love, I mean, you've given us an answer to the question, right? Like that's a salient example that anybody
Yeah.
can leave this conversation
Yeah.
remembering. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
And what you're saying, it's sort of how the internet also like was built, right? It's by
Yeah.
using it, you discover use cases for
Yeah.
it that fit your unique
Yeah.
needs and what you're maybe best positioned, problem you're best positioned to solve. So
Yeah.
I think that that's a really cool like analogy and way for us to think about how to move from consumer to creator. Just use it
Absolutely.
first.
Absolutely.
It starts there. Okay. Um, Still staying on this like African context,
Mhm.
particularly Nigeria. Let's just get
Mhm.
into it. Like the infrastructure realities of what's going on right now
Mhm.
is interesting. One of, I think he was an ISF fellow in your year,
Yeah.
David Timmy. He's like a super AI guy.
Yeah.
He led a session yesterday just
Mhm.
talking about basically like delineating the entire industry from the chip manufacturers
Yeah.
to the hardware folks to the people who have the software layer on top of
Yeah.
that's consumer facing like open AI.
Mhm.
Um, and we're discussing where does Africa fit in this space,
Yeah.
particularly given our infrastructure realities. I mean,
Yeah.
about 36% of Africans have internet access.
Mhm.
Um, NVIDIA GPUs cost like 40,000 US dollars. So
Yeah.
like, we're not gonna go try to play in that space. How are you at OpenAI thinking about the realities of consumption, creation
Yeah.
of AI on the continent, and where do you think that the majority of users would play, or even industries that want to be built? So, yeah, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think when you came in, I think this is a question oftentimes also get posed quite a lot. And my answer is, for instance, the good thing about me, I didn't start at OpenAI. I also worked other jobs which were tech related,
Yeah.
right? For instance, my role with the UN, it focused on school connectivity, right? So I've dealt
Ah,
with connectivity issues, and the initiative called Giga is trying to take internet to the schools, to connect schools to the internet. And the challenges I discovered there, Anikim, it cannot be solved by one single player. It cannot be solved by the UN itself. It cannot be solved by government itself. It cannot be solved by OpenAI itself. It is a multi-stakeholder conversation. I think
right.
that's why people like Strive Masiwa are so honorable with Cassava Technology, what they are doing, right? Building its first AI factory. And I think even that is a perfect example how people need to come together to kind of solve a critical issue which has been going on for many years, right? So I think if you pose that good question to OpenAI, it's not only an OpenAI related response that I could give you, but it's a rather multi-stakeholder response that needs to be happening, right? It needs to include the telcos, it needs to include the internet providers, it needs to include
Right.
government. So I could not even tell you how a single company thinks about it. Everybody knows it is a pressing issue, but it's a matter of collective effort and collective solutions that can be called to solve the problem, right? So,
Right.
yeah, so I think the way we think about it, okay, we want to provide access to ChatGPT. And look, we have over 800 million weekly users, and the majority of them are free users, right? So this is providing free intelligence. Based upon the free intelligence, including ChatGPT Go, people can create, right? People can create, people can build it to their respective interests and operations. So this is a start. But I think other underlying issues, I'm not the government, right? And I also don't envy the government to solve a critical issue. But
Yeah.
yeah, but then again, I think it cannot be solved by one single player, but rather by a collective of players. And us, from our part, we are providing access to intelligence, free intelligence, to which people can actually leverage to their respective interests.
Okay, that makes sense. And this is a good seg because you mentioned the government, and you mentioned some of the previous work that you've done. Uh, so just like navigating, you're smiling, Emmanuel. So I think you know where I'm going with this. So, Emmanuel, please tell us, navigating government relations, like you're trying to explain AI policy, for example, to government officials that perhaps are still like learning to adopt some of the older technologies, much less having a firm understanding of
Yeah.
AI. And I was listening to one of your interviews. I think this was when you were in Ghana, and one of the Ghanaian ministers had talked about how he took all of his colleagues in the cabinet for a
Yeah.
3-day AI boot camp just to get them up to speed. I'd be
Yeah.
curious to hear like your thoughts on something like that as a way to at least raise the baseline of understanding
Yeah.
for people who are making the decisions with respect to AI policy. Because in that interview, you also said, I think that you were asked, how do we make sure that AI is used safely, and then you brought in the fact that safety needs to be balanced with like
Yeah.
innovation. You don't want to stifle them. So I'd be keen to hear your thoughts today, Emmanuel, on that.
Yeah, I would say, Nikim, everybody's trying to figure out AI, right? And also from a government perspective, government obviously is beholden to its stakeholders, which are the citizens, rightfully so, right? And this is a very
Right.
important responsibility, and it needs to be ensured that technology that is deployed in the country is very safe. And I think in terms of understanding, the way we perceive it from OpenAI, we have an OpenAI Academy, right? Through which, because we cannot be in every country,
Yeah.
unfortunately, there are not 50 of me who can just travel around and explain it. But I also think the AI conversation is bigger than my role, right? Because AI in itself is such a transformational technology, whether I'm happen to be the African lead or not, irres- irrespective of it, technology is there and people need to use it, right? So the way we kind of see with Open Academy, we provide free knowledge on how people can leverage AI beyond ChatGPT, right? So sometimes it's just about people having to click there and kind of look at 45-minute sessions on how other people are using it, whether you're a government player, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a startup founder. there are different lessons there, how people can actually learn how to use it. And whenever I travel and tell people about it, it's like, oh, we didn't even know. Maybe we need to do a better job to kind of discuss it broadly that this thing exists. And that's why we partnered or we had a collaboration with Unilag, right? Because we wanted to bring this to Nigeria to raise more awareness. But on the government side, how to navigate it, and you came, I think, the AI conversation, particularly on the policy side, is very new and it's quite novel. For this reason alone, it's good to have conversation. For instance, the minister you mentioned, we had a good conversation, and he told me about the concerns, and I kind of told him our respective policies that they exist and how we ensure safety. So he was very keen to kind of learn more, and I think it's about kind of keeping in touch with governments, and whenever governments have questions, to provide them the answer, to reassure them, and also at the same time to also make governments understand regulation is important, but it needs to be one that doesn't stifle innovation, because we don't want to get to a point where we overregulate and then we miss out on incredible opportunities. Nevertheless, safety should come first, and this is also something we have at OpenAI, rightfully so, to ensure safety. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's still that like maintaining balance sort of between safety and not stifling innovation. Okay. You mentioned this Unilag OpenAI Academy. In that conversation, the fireside chats, I think a question had been posed, and this question gets asked a lot, is talked about a lot. I think you also know where I'm going with this. Is like,
Yeah.
is AI going to take our jobs? And I think the consensus was that it would not replace people. It will enhance what people will do. But I mean, like, to be very real and transparent, if you're able to, Emmanuel, it'll be so good to know, like, are there actual jobs that AI could take where humans, it's possible in the next 5 or 10 years, humans wouldn't need to do those jobs anymore? So for our students who are graduating, something for them to have at the back of their mind and keep an eye out for. Are
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I think Anya Kira, this is super industry dependent, right? Again, I'm not an expert in banking. I'm not an expert. I used to
Right.
work in the pharmaceutical sector, and I know in the pharmaceutical space, AI has been heavily integrated, right? Whether it takes away jobs, I don't know. But also, we also should be real that AI is definitely a disruptive technology, which is changing different industries, right? And it's and also, if you look over history and over time, right? Look, the printing press came and certain jobs were no longer needed. Just the same way
Yeah.
when social media came, certain jobs no longer existed, right? So I think it's not so much an AI thing, but it's rather just technology. Once technology disrupts, there are certain jobs that will kind of, I won't say maybe disappear. They may change, they may disappear. Nevertheless, there will be changes happening. It may include disappearance of certain jobs for sure.
Right. When you mentioned, you said social media, for example, like, some things will change, but then there's also the rise of industries that we didn't
Yeah,
expect. If you
yeah,
had told me in 2008 that you could make $1 million
yeah,
being an Instagram influencer or being a streamer,
exactly.
who would have thought? So perhaps
Exactly.
there's also things that we can't see yet.
Yeah, and Nick, I mean, what you just say, I actually love it because oftentimes, and also, and this is one thing I discover not only when I speak across Africa, because I also happen to be in the US, also quite a bit. And a question that I get posed is obviously about the downsides, right? But wow, there are so many more opportunities, and I know there are so many students currently listening.
Yeah.
While I was a student once as well, not knowing where my life would take me, having a lot of questions and trying out different things, be it internships, be it fellowships. But one thing I can tell you for sure is the world that we currently live in, with the technologies that exist, it can actually create so many opportunities that didn't exist 5 years ago. And I think
Yeah.
this is kind of the perspective that I want students to have even more, particularly African students, that technology can become a great equalizer to what you may lack in proximity to any other, I don't know whether it's certain internships, certain careers, right? Actually, it allows you to become creative. But
Yeah.
yet, it is a journey that you have to take. But I think if you were to go back to a person like myself who was a student literally almost 20 years ago, and you show me this technology that exists today, I would not be able to believe it. So I would
Right.
love, while it's okay to talk about job disruption, job disappearances, look also about the upside that it is, right? Like you've mentioned, you came, wow. And you talk about influencer. I mean, look at fintechs that exists, right? Fintechs and tech lawyers and so many other careers, which you can technically create your own career, right? Based
Yeah.
upon the technology that exists, but it's a matter of understanding how you can use it to your own. And I think that's the interesting part. Everybody's looking for book that will solve all your issues, like a quick fix. Life, unfortunately, oftentimes doesn't happen like this, right? Life is oftentimes not a sprint by a marathon. As a student, enjoy the time, but also use the time to apply yourself, to learn, to connect, learn from your peers. Everybody wants
Mm,
to connect up, but there's so much you can learn from your peers left
that's
and
true.
right, that we oftentimes ignore. You may sit next to the next Aliko Dangote, who sits next to you, right? You may sit next to the next president of Nigeria. You can sit next to a next Ngozi. So I think you just don't know. But what I would like to stress, opportunities that exist today, including for African students, didn't exist 5 years ago. You should actually cherish that.
Yeah. Wow. So well said. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for
Yeah.
that. Uh, while that's like simmering in, I would love us to, you know, pivot a little bit to talk about just data and privacy.
Mhm.
So, how can we trust that like our data is safe? When we see, I know that OpenAI says that it doesn't train its models on any personal user data, but
Yeah.
we do see other tech companies sell user information.
Mm.
Um, how for a person who is hesitant to do what she said in the first in the beginning of this interview, where it's like just use it, just apply
Yeah.
yourself, hesitant to do that because they're not certain of the safety of their data, what would you say to that?
Yeah, obviously, I can only speak for my company, right? And as
Right.
you've mentioned, we take privacy very serious, and there are restrictions on what our models are trained on. But I think, look, it's again, I cannot speak for other companies. I used to work for another tech company as well, and obviously, the company happens to handle things just differently. But I would just always familiarize myself with what it says in the terms of services, right? And I think it's often a good way to kind of get acquainted with what it says and just kind of go with it. But it also is often beyond your respective control because I don't. There are obviously laws in place, but also there are technology companies who then kind of manage the data.
Right.
But look, familiarize yourself with the terms of services, and if you agree with it, use it. If you don't agree with that particular service, don't use it. That's how much liberty and agency you actually have.
Right. Okay. I think that's a fair point.
No,
You're like, read the terms and conditions.
I think Ania came in. It's also a good thing to also tell students, right? You are actually empowered to make decisions, right? And you may not agree with the service, and if you agree, go for it. If you don't, uh,
Right.
just don't, right? And I think oftentimes we tend to not everybody, right? But I just want to stress that the fact that you have agency, you have actually a decision that you can make. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm kind of going off script here, but it's something that I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on, especially now that you're saying, you have agency. The truth is, there's not just one platform or one provider, right?
Yeah.
We're having a conversation with you. Of course, OpenAI owns ChatGPT, Sora, but there are other US players, there's Claude, but then there's other international players. I know that there's one popular one, I think is Mistral or something like that
Yeah.
in the EU.
It's France.
Yeah, and then like it's in France, and then like of course the Chinese players
Mhm.
as well. So I'm very curious to know what OpenAI is thinking about the rise of China in the AI race on the application layer. That's one, and then two, what your intuitive feeling is about where Africa kind of will end up sitting in this, like between the West and the East in terms of adoption of these technologies.
No, on the China thing, look, Anikema, I think obviously this is a question that I probably need to pose my leads in the US because look, they happen to be based, many of which in DC, so it's more so a conversation between China and the US, right? So
Yeah.
I cover Africa, But look, everybody knows there's competition in the AI space, right? And look, competition is not always a bad thing because OpenAI, as you know, started in 2015 as a research lab, right? And to see
Yes.
where we are now, it's just a difference. So we've also grown over the years, and we are confident in what we do, what we provide, and competition will always exist. So everybody needs to benefit from competition while we do our thing. So on that part, right? But I think on where Africa sits, that's a very good question, Nikime, and I think many more people need to be dealing with that question because I don't know. In terms of looking into the future, right? I would not even say to place Africa between a geopolitical power competition because I think every continent and their respective journey is different, right? I think Africa's relationship to tech is different than, for instance, Europe or the US. But what I see in Africa, whenever I travel, and you came in, people are figuring technology and AI in their respective context themselves, and it doesn't have to sit in between continents. It needs to be shaped by its own people, and I think that's one thing I love to stress as well. Everybody kind of talks about where does Africa sit, where's Africa in race. I think Africa is a critical time where young people are shaping the role of technology in society, and people are building on Keme. I think people are already
Yeah.
using it before I joined, and even if I happen to leave the company one day, there will still people be building, right? So what I'm trying to say is, Africa is forging its own journey, and it doesn't need to sit between continents. People like
Right.
Strike Masiwa, I mean, look at him, right? I met him. Actually, had the honor to meet him in South Africa a few months ago. Sit down with him
Oh,
for
nice.
a meeting. Super inspiring. And if you listen to him, he's really a believer in Africa, right? And I think there will
Yeah.
be more Strives and people who do greater things than Strive. But I think Strive serves as a model as an African who didn't take no as an answer. He just went for it, and he's been building ever since. So look, Africa will shape its own journey. Each country is different, but I'll definitely see Nigeria in the forefront of this for sure.
Nice. Look, Nigeria at the forefront. Let's hope we lead we live up to that expectation or confidence that you have in our country.
I have confidence in
um,
all of Africa. But
Africa to the world.
there are a lot of beautiful things in terms of Nigeria's tech journey, right? Look, I met with Paystack recently in South Africa as well, and to just
Yes.
hear the journey Paystack has taken and other fintechs that are actually
Yes.
breaking boundaries, not only within Africa but also serving as a model for the world. Wow, let's go!
Yeah.
Africa's ready for business.
I love it. Yes, here, here. And speaking on Africa, and after this, I'll open it up for questions. Then I'll
Yeah.
come back in the back end and kind of close with one or two questions. But speaking on Africa and like our representation in AI, how would again just because a lot of what we might be doing would be building on existing models, right? The barrier to entry for like building from the ground up makes it more competitive to kind of focus on the application layer, right?
Yeah.
So in making AI like reflective and representative, I know that this had been going on, at least on my LinkedIn feed last week and this week, where people would ask their AI agent, like, hey, do a caricature of me based on what you know of me. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've seen it, but I haven't tried it.
Okay, me too. I was just like, you know what? I don't even want to know.
Yeah.
But some people, particularly Africans, would ask. I remember one specific person said that their AI agents, this is a black woman who's an executive,
Yeah.
basically represented them as like a white male,
Okay.
with like the characteristics of the work that she does. And she
Yeah.
asked it. She was like, "Hey, why would you do that? Like, I'm a black woman." And the model responded, I didn't know your race, but based on the work that you've been doing, I've been trained on representative data that says that this would likely be a
Interesting.
white male. And
Interesting.
so that's why. And so how do we fix that? Because obviously that's not the type of experience that we want to be having. And if
Yeah.
there's bias in that layer, like there's likely bias in the responses that we're getting. There isn't that nuance that we might need to be
Yeah.
able to leverage AI effectively within the African or Nigerian context.
Yeah, no, this is a good question, Anya Kame. I think this is something I would probably ask my tech people because I'm not a tech person, right? I would not know the nitty-gritty of the tech itself, but
Yeah.
yeah, understandably, I think it needs to be more inclusive. It needs to be reflective, and I think every company always can do better, right? And I think we don't shy away from criticism. I don't know which service the lady used, but yeah, it needs to be fixed.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I think our students have been asking a lot of questions already.
Students,
So
go
I
easy
want to
on
give
me.
them,
Go easy on me.
yeah.
Okay? I'm not a technologist. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Policy, Africa. So we'll have some questions. I'll just read them out. Let's see if we have this. Yeah, okay, perfect. So our team has compiled the questions just to make it
Yeah.
easier for me. Um, all right. The first question: Why is why is ChatGPT not giving a subscription discount for students to access the Pro? So I reckon this is on top of the already discounted ChatGPT Go. But that's the question here.
Okay. A discount for students. I think the ChatGPT
Yes.
Go is applicable for applies to everybody, right? I think it was already ChatGPT Go in itself is a discounted prescription, subscription. Sorry, I'm talking prescription, subscription. So therefore, I'm wondering what the question really is, because
Yeah.
ChatGPT Go was actually launched in October of last year to make it affordable for everybody. But within that tier, there's no specific student discount. It just happens to be broadly covered in
For
ChatGPT.
everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that that's fair. I mean, that's already such a significant discount to what
Yeah.
a plus player would pay. I mean, it's the equivalent of like $4.70 as opposed to
Exactly.
$21.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question that we have is, and my apologies, I'll just read it as stated. It says, can you state certain policies that influence our level of accessibility and restriction?
That's a very good question. I don't know, I also don't want to say anything wrong, but I can actually provide that in detail, verbatim to you after the session and you came in. Just because,
Yeah.
look, policies are important. I also don't want to say anything or misquote anything. I'd rather just provide the link where you can actually read across it. I could just tell you these things verbatim, not verbatim, but I want you to have it verbatim for you to understand it correctly. So let me give to you a little bit after the session. I can send you, but very good
Okay,
question.
that's fantastic. And so we'll be able to share it with our students.
Yeah,
So that'll be
yeah,
awesome. Thank
yeah,
you so much.
of course.
Okay. How does AI infrastructure affect our environmental sustainability? Good question. And how can we cope with that effect?
Yeah, I think AI infrastructure. There's been a lot of conversation, right, on conservation, on nature, and I think it kind of depends on the country we use. For instance, Stargate is one of our biggest infrastructure project, and it's mainly in the U.S. And they have a collaboration with state governments and also different companies to ensure that it's considered of environmental exposure and also environment context. So like I've said, right, it's always a matter of collaboration. So ensuring that it protects the environment, you don't go in by yourself, but you kind of consult the government, you work with the governments, and that's what we've been doing in other regions where we've been part of, infrastructure projects like Stargate. So in ensuring it will be tough to cover all jurisdictions where we operate, but really just
Right.
a universal answer is you go at it by collaborating with local governments, but also with different companies who by default have to comply with the local context. Yeah,
Right.
a very good question.
Okay. Yeah, that was a good one. Um, Someone asked, and I think this is interesting because you kind of touched on it a little bit in one of the responses. Very, very open-ended question, and it just says, "What is the future of AI?"
Yeah, yeah. I think it depends on who you ask, right? It's a very good question, but I would say the future of AI is AI will be part of the future. I think this is one thing I can tell for sure, right? And I see this because from the startups that I meet when traveling across the continent or beyond, or even to kind of, I mentioned the 1 million business customers that we have at the moment. Everybody uses AI differently, and there are also similarities, but reality is everybody's using it, or not everybody, but most businesses are using or finding a way to integrate it. So for this reason, I would say the future will be more where AI is included in operationals, in businesses, and also people interact with AI differently, right? And there are different use
Right.
cases, and some that I came across recently, which I also think is funny. But no, I think AI is definitely part of the future and will be as it is. So yeah, we definitely live in an AI intelligence age for sure.
Right. Uh, it's interesting because your colleague that I mentioned from ISF was talked about this also yesterday around um, the next steps in terms of artificial general intelligence and then like artificial super intelligence and
Yeah,
what the race looks like again
yeah,
between like the US and China,
mm,
and how like the middle countries where they can then sit in terms of where they intend to sit
yeah.
in the future of AI.
What did he
Uh,
say? What was his answer? And he came out. I'm super curious.
so he was talking about, so someone had posed the question about how do you, as an African, and this person is from Kenya, how do
Hmm.
you, as an African, start to think about talent in
Okay.
terms of the AI race? So like forward thinking, where it's kind of similar to the question that I asked around like what careers would look like.
Yeah.
And David was talking about how it will be difficult for talent to be focused on certain parts of the supply chain where
Hmm.
AI is concerned,
Yeah.
and that the application layer is the like easiest entry point for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so while the US and China are focused on trying to be the first to reach artificial super intelligence,
Yeah.
some of these other countries, and it's similar to what you said, can be thinking about how to apply AI to their
Yeah.
specific use cases and
Yeah.
kind of building on top of the technology that already exists.
Yeah. 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 I think it's actually a good point that he's making, right? Because um, everybody's trying to figure out how to apply and to integrate AI into their respective whether business or lives, right? And I think this is where it's important, you came in that it's a collaborative effort, right? OpenAI is providing, for instance, I've mentioned that ChatGPT 800 million weekly users, and most of it's free,
Yeah,
but it's a collective responsibility. Schools have to ensure that the curriculum is preparing children how to actually that AI actually exists, right? Because
right.
every week, every day, there's a change. But I think if you're not preparing the students for the world that they are about to encounter, I think you're failing them, right? So I think therefore it's a collective effort, and I think from our part we are providing the Open Eye Academy as a platform, which I'm also happy to share with you after this, Anikeme, so that you can share this with
Yes.
students, because that provides at least a baseline knowledge on any AI related knowledge, and I think this is where governments need to do a better job in curriculum creation, education practitioners need to do a better job in applying it, and we need to even increase our efforts with open academies and other initiatives, which we've been doing. So, very good point. And I think in order for us to meet the AI age that we are currently living in, everybody has a collective responsibility in this.
Yeah, so well said. I know that Miva, this is something that we're working on
Yeah,
against sometime in September in terms of curriculum.
love it.
We're already incorporating it in the like School of Computing, but we're
Wow,
going to have defined degrees
I
that
love
are
it.
just solely focused on artificial intelligence. So
Yeah,
by God's grace, the regulators allow us to it, and then we can,
I'm sure they
then
would.
we,
I'm sure they would.
yeah. So thank you for that. So we'll have the the I guess the policies and that's
Yeah,
the OpenAI Academy. We can share that afterwards.
yeah, for sure.
Okay. So the next question kind of piggybacks on where we even jumped off on this previous question, and he asked what gaps currently exist in Africa's AI ecosystem that developers can help fill. So maybe from conversations that you've been having with companies that are already using the tool, are there any gaps that you have seen or that people have complained to you about?
Mm, maybe not necessarily gaps, but I would say so many of the challenges, and they are not only related to Africa because other continents experience the same, right? It's really just the infrastructure conversation, and also obviously the cost that I've mentioned, right? But look, we've been trying to do our part in making it more affordable as part of our mission, right? So I would say that the infrastructure part, accessibility, and also underlying issues that are kind of by default there, right? Which is connectivity, obviously. But this is not something I'm hearing, but this is something I've known of through my previous role at the UN initiative and others. Electricity, internet connectivity, so much is interrelated. So there are more of these gaps existing beyond, even in Africa, but also beyond, that exist. It's beyond AI, right? Because in order for you to access
Yeah.
our service, you need to have access to oftentimes the internet, right? And also, it will be ideal to have electricity as well. So there are just a lot of base gaps need to be fixed all over
Right.
the board. Mm.
It would be ideal to have electricity.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, okay. A couple more questions before we wrap up. I know we don't have too much time. Um, one of our students is asking, specific to academics, how can students leverage AI for academic writings and not be caught up in plagiarism?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, well, I know we have some professors here, so I don't want to get in trouble with some professors, right? I used to be at uni as well. Um, no, but look, I think it's oftentimes, and I can just we have an education team dedicated, right, which deals with these answers, so I can actually also look up the respective response. But I would say it's oftentimes good to utilize services like ChatGPT for a second opinion, to after having done your research yourself, you run it and ask, right? Hey, are there other references
Yeah.
that I can utilize? So more so like a calculator kind of situation, right? Where you have to calculate yourself, but you use a calculator just to support you to get your answer maybe faster, more accurately, more efficiently. But obviously don't abuse it in a way where it just creates your own paper. But I think look, it's good to share ideas and to get some feedback. It's good to maybe cross-check references to get a second opinion, third opinion. So I think to kind of see it as a support system as opposed to as a tool to make you do your work.
Right. I haven't heard of the analogy of using it like a calculator. I think that that's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, yeah. Because I can imagine when the calculator came along, everybody was saying everybody's going to no longer be able to
No.
calculate themselves. Right? People still do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But do you think, and just to, because this is something that I'm concerned about. I don't know if you see this on LinkedIn these days, but everybody starts to sound the same. People just like use, and here's the truth. But here's the thing, and it's like, okay, what does an authentic voice sound like in the
Mm,
age of AI?
mm,
And what is really you're laughing? What is really the impact? Like we don't know yet what the
mm.
long term impact is in terms of like cognitive function.
Yeah.
So are there for you personally? Are there like additional guardrails for how you use AI to kind of ensure that you're not in that decline of now you're kind of outsourcing your core thinking
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
this intelligence?
Yeah, I think me personally, I've been always a fan of both the spoken word and also the written word. So for this reason, I love authenticity, and doesn't mean that AI doesn't sound authentic because you can actually it has memory, right? But
Yeah.
I oftentimes see, for instance, ChatGPT as like I've mentioned, like a support. If I write something down, I say, are there ways to tweak it better to make it sound a bit more polished? But the initial draft came from me, right? And I think, look, everybody to each their own, but it's just my preference to wanting to sound authentic, and also the work that I do. I have to rely on just really sit there and read policies, read documents by myself, and then when I respond, I can utilize it as a second opinion in terms of what I've written down. But I think, yeah,
Like
I
that.
would wish for people to sound more authentic, and just not to, yeah, maybe to, I don't know, I don't even want to call it misuse it because to each their own, right? But I think it's also a skill that will always be needed, being able to write and read, obviously. So for this reason, it's a good time to use it to improve your writing. Once you draft something, get a second opinion whether the draft is okay, whether it can be tweaked, how it can be tweaked. So I would just use it as a support system as opposed to letting the service dictate my thoughts. That's how I see it.
Right.
But that's my opinion. Yeah.
Right. That's how we prefer for Miva students to use it as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So
yeah,
Miva students, I
yeah.
hope that this is, yeah. Um, okay, we have a existential question here. And someone is asking, what are threats that AI may pose to human existence?
Mm,
The fact that AGI and like agentic AI are proliferating the tech space now. So this is beyond like jobs, like
mm.
existentially, what are we facing with the rise of AI?
Very good question. I would probably have to ask my people who are actually working on that field, right? We have people who work on specific different contexts, like geopolitical related, and I know we have written also some paper on this, particularly on the national security front. We just released it, I think, yesterday or so, and I'm happy to share this as well. But it's a reality that AI will obviously, as a conversation, will go beyond just the mere topic of email writing, right? There will also be a security component, and I
Yes.
think it will be up to government to kind of obviously have this conversation from happening that AI benefits and not so much poses a threat to humanity. But it's also reality that the AI conversation has entered the politics race, the arms race. So yeah, without having an answer to your specific point, but it's more so a geopolitical answer that needs to be given to your question. And there's much that's been written about it there, but AI has already entered, I would say, the military space, right? So all of us
Yeah,
know it. So whether how a threat it poses, you would have to read on it. But from my perspective, it is a government conversation as well. Yeah. And hopefully our
makes
governments can ensure that all of us remain safe. Yeah.
makes sense. Makes sense.
Mm,
Okay, our final two questions. Um, the first is okay. I'll take them one after the other. But the first is how can it kind of ties a little bit to what we've talked about, but it goes a
mm,
little bit deeper. How can African companies compete globally using AI rather than consuming it? So I know we talked about on an individual basis of being a creator versus a
mm,
consumer, and you talked about how the use cases differ by industry. But
yeah.
is there any kind of broad framework for an African company to be thinking about using AI to be competitive globally?
Mm, yeah, no, I like this conversation, but you have to also have to understand there are so many companies. So are we talking about a company with 10 employees or like a company with 50,000 employees, right? And also want people to understand when we speak about company, you have to be a bit specific, right? Are you talking about a tech company? Are we talking about a car company? But what I can say is companies like telcos have already been using AI, right? Many fintechs are already using AI. So and those are companies operating on a global scale or even intercontinental scale. MTN, I think, just closed a partnership with Microsoft on Copilot, for instance, right? So they've been integrating AI already. Other fintechs that I've already spoken to, they also have integrated AI into their respective operations. So whether it's a matter of competition, I don't know, but it's definitely a matter of making business processes more efficient for sure through AI. And I think, look, the more efficient businesses become, the more they can focus on the core business parts, right? Such as
Right.
expanding or becoming better at something else, which without AI would have taken more time and resources. So, look, AI is also a cost reduction tool, right? To which people can do the high level work as opposed to tedious work. So, yeah, I think more companies need to integrate or find a way to integrate AI just to remain competitive. That's my perspective. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Mm,
Thank you so much for that. So our final question is kind of a two-part, like jumbo. It's a
yeah.
good way for us to kind of end this conversation, given the
Yeah.
audience that you're speaking with. So it's sort of like, what practical steps should African universities take to prepare students for meaningful participation in the global AI ecosystem?
Mm,
So on the like university side, but also from the student perspective, if you're choosing a career path
mm,
today, would you still choose to be an engineer, or would you think that, you know, being in policy, for example, or some other aspect that's sort of adjacent to the technical side,
yeah.
would be the way that we should think about going, especially
Yeah.
growth?
Yeah, I would say, Anikemi, look, you've mentioned Miva already preparing students, right, with courses specific, dedicated, and focused on AI. I think this is the way to go. I think more universities globally need to do a better job, and you're even far ahead than other universities across the globe who are not doing it. So I think this is definitely from a university perspective. This is how you prepare students for future careers and for even understanding the world that they're currently existing, right? So that's on the university part. On the career part, it's interesting because you're actually speaking to somebody who was told all his life, don't study politics because you don't make money in politics.
Uh-huh.
so so I think for this reason, I was just very stubborn and didn't really listen, and I just went for politics because I had a deep interest in politics. So I went for politics. As I did internships, I found this role or this field, government affairs, and I chose it, and I've been working there ever since. So my advice to students oftentimes things may change, right? You may start as an engineer and then you become, I don't know, you can become eventually you become something else, like you become a policy advisor. It doesn't matter, right? But I think
Yes.
find something, I would say besides global trends, find something that you really want to do in your life because you are very unique, right? There's only one of you. And while it is also okay to fail at times, to maybe choose the wrong study and then you pivot to something else, but there's only one you, so do you. I think that's just my advice. I did politics, and for you, it may be engineering. If I would not look, having engineering knowledge, whether AI is here or not, will always be helpful,
Yeah.
and you can build upon it, right? So I think any STEM related fields oftentimes advice, and I wish I had the talent for STEM, which I don't. Unfortunately, God didn't bless me with STEM related talent. I was bad
You
in
have
math.
so many other talents.
Oh, I hope so, but I was bad in biology and everything else, right? But I had bad grades as a student, so I was able to talk my way out of not being able to pass the class. So maybe that's why I chose policy. But my advice is really find something that you actually burn for. And I know it sounds very cliche, but go for it. Go for it. You want to be an engineer, be an engineer. You want to be an AI researcher, go for it. And I think
Yeah.
you have the tools to do it, and really just go for it. And I don't know, like one analogy that I oftentimes use, maybe to close with this, and to each their own, right? But I love the story of Moses. You know why? Because Moses was afraid when God told him to go to
Yeah.
Pharaoh, and God told him, "Hey, what you have in your hand?" He says, "I have a staff," and then God told him to use that staff. So sometimes you already have the staff in your hand, just use what you have and build upon it and go for it. So that's just really my advice overall.
I love that. And what a way to end this conversation. Um, this directive to use what you already have,
Yeah,
and also to actually take some
yeah,
action. It's
yeah,
really cool because you're book ending this conversation. You started with this,
yeah,
how does a person leverage AI, and you say use it, just
yeah.
start.
Use it. Use
The use cases will become apparent to you when you start.
it.
Focus on what it is that you burn for, and don't be afraid to take that step.
Yeah, 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 and also again, one thing I also want to stress is look left and right at your peers, right? Who doesn't say that you cannot create a AI group in your respective town or university or campus? You have so much at your disposal, some things you just really don't need money for, you need enthusiasm for, right? Oftentimes. And I think this is actually something beautifully because often many people say, I don't have this, but look at what you have actually. You're alive, you are young, you
Yeah.
are smart, you have the future ahead of you, and you've been blessed with AI to live, and I think use it and leverage to the best of your ability.
Right. Wow. Well, Emmanuel, this has been such a fantastic conversation. You should see all the hearts right now on YouTube, like heart, 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 heart. Um, so I know that our students are really grateful for this time. We've taken
Yeah.
about an hour of your day, and we're so appreciative of it.
Oh,
So on behalf of the Chancellor, Sim Shagaya, my boss,
thank you.
the Vice Chancellor, Professor Tayo, our registrar, the management of Miva Open University, all our staff and students, I just
Yeah.
want to extend another note of gratitude for you for
Thank
taking the
you.
time to speak with us.
Thank you for
Um,
having me. Thank you for having me. And Anike made a good job on you on the moderation. It was fun. Hope to see you maybe in New York or somewhere else, wherever you are traveling. So I'll be in
Yeah.
Stanford next. So if you happen to be at this Africa conference too,
Oof.
send a shout.
All right. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you
so
so much.
much.
Yeah, thank you. Take care,
All
students. Bye
right.
bye.